Good evening. I'm Betsy Brune. I'm the director of the Smithsonian American Art Museum, and tonight I have a truly great, really easy, really fun job. First, I caution you to turn off your cell phones. Then, I want to remind you that after the lecture, there will be a reception upstairs in the lobby, and you're all invited to join us. Also, I want to most especially thank Clarice Smith. Clarice is herself a painter. She's a commissioner of the Smithsonian American Art Museum, and she is also the very enlightened, farsighted, and generous donor who has made possible this distinguished lecture series, which is now in its third year. It is, of course, the first year we've gotten to have the lectures here in our wonderful new Nantucket McAvoy Auditorium. It's so fun for us to see it full, and I want to thank each and every one of you for coming tonight, and also Joanne Sims and Nona Martin for all they've done to help plan and organize tonight's talk. But I said the job was easy. As for introducing tonight's speaker, well, that's probably the easiest part of all. Maya Lin really doesn't need any introduction to this audience. I think she's probably been Washington's best-known artist, or the artist best known in Washington, for the past 25 years, and for that matter, pretty much across America and even beyond. She burst into our consciousness 25 years ago when she was just a Yale grad student who won the design competition for the Vietnam Memorial, and the rest was history. We learned at that time a little bit about her background, and I'll repeat some of that tonight. She was born in Athens, Ohio. It's the home of Ohio University, and her parents had emigrated from China just before the communists took over in 1949. Her father was a ceramicist who was also Dean of Fine Arts at Ohio University, and her mother was professor of literature there. So quite naturally, from childhood, Maya Lin and her brother Tan grew up surrounded by books and art, by all kinds of influences from the East and from the West, by nature and culture and science and philosophy, Japanese gardens, and my own favorite, the Hopewell Indian mounds, and lots more. When she went to Yale, she divided her interests between art and architecture, and these two still occupy her very much today. In fact, Art and Architecture is the title of her talk tonight. Well, that Vietnam Memorial experience so long ago was quite a searing one. It was an amazing way to debut a career in the art world, and it was full of controversy. I think it would have been pretty hard for most artists ever to move beyond it. Imagine peaking at 21. But over the last quarter century, Maya Lin has produced consistently moving and emotional and powerful works of art of striking originality. She made a number of additional monuments in the 1980s, and then in 1989, not wanting to be defined solely as a monument maker, she declared an end to that phase of her career. She turned to sculpture, which she describes as poetry, and also to architecture, which she describes as prose, and began working in both of those forms and formats as well. Then in 2000, she published an elegant book called Boundaries, and I think that pretty fairly describes the psychic place where she lives and where she has located her own work, never really in one place only, but always on the edge. I want to just briefly call your attention to her latest exhibition, which was organized by Richard Andrews at the Henry Art Gallery at the University of Washington in Seattle. It closed there just last month. The show is called Systematic Landscapes, and it features phenomenal, ambitious, large-scale works that reveal her continuing fascination with landscape, with natural materials, and with renewable resources. The installations, some of them are room-sized and very large. It must be wonderful to see, and so we're grateful the show is traveling. You can see it in St. Louis, San Diego, Denver, and beyond through 2008. So now, if everybody's had a chance to turn off your cell phones, let's welcome Maya Lin.
Thank you, Betsy. I was explaining it's actually really nice to be here, which I've got to say for 25 years, God, it's been a long time. I have to just say undergrad, otherwise I'm 4 years older than I actually am. Please don't do that to me yet. I think I needed to move on from certain memorials, and so what you're going to see tonight is the last pretty much 10 years of work, either artworks or architectural works. I had a chance this afternoon to walk through the Smithsonian's American Art Museum's collection, and I was just struck by a lot of the 19th century, 18th century landscape painters. And oftentimes I've seen myself in that tradition. It's just that two dimensions isn't my format. And in historic times, landscape painters gave you an idea of looking at nature, going to places where you might not be able to travel to. In our day and age, I think I've used the lens of technology to give us a different vantage point onto looking at the natural world, whether it's a macroscopic view, a microscopic view, a satellite view, a sonar view, and that has been a very much strong part of my work. Though we don't have favorites, and is there any way you can hit the light off me a little? It's really glaring. I would really appreciate that. I'm going to start with, I think this was a breakthrough work of mine. It's called the Wavefield. It was done in University of Michigan in Ann Arbor in 1995. I had been asked in to create an artwork in front of, or in the courtyard of, an aerospace engineering building. And what I came up with is 100 by 100. It's 10,000 square feet. It's framed within a courtyard. And it's actually based on a naturally occurring water wave called a Stokes wave. And as you look out when you're taking classes, it all came about because I started studying the nature of flight, aerospace engineering, and came across this image in a fluid dynamic book, and just knew the artwork would be about that. It has led to a group, and I do tend to work in series, of a group of water waves, or at times sand dune waves. So this is another image. Oftentimes I use photographic images to take inspiration from. The second in the series became a piece called Flutter, which is in Miami at the federal courthouse that is, it's still under construction. It isn't quite done. And this was installed last year. And it's about 30,000 square feet. The scale of it changes, and I think you're beginning to see it look almost more like a dune formation. And the last of this series will be for Storm King, and we'll be installing a 90,000 square foot wave field. And this is a site, it's a former gravel pit. And for me, each time it changes because your relation to it will change because of the scale. For instance, with this one, the federal marshals got involved, and they didn't want anything that anyone could hide behind. So by nature, it got a little shallower. And then when I was on site, we built it up again and had the federal marshals, and then they said, oh, we can see over this, no problem. But with the Storm King piece, I will be spending the entire winter building models and modeling it up in plasticine, getting the right scale, the right geometry, making sure that it still in the end has a resonance of a strong work of art and doesn't almost disappear into, say, landscape architecture as a realm. So these are just